The story of West Indians coming to England seeking a new beginning is well known. Empire Windrush's docking at Tilbury on June 22, 1948, with the first wave of Jamaicans responding to the call to fill a labour shortage, is an important moment in Britain's modern history, particularly amongst African Caribbeans. This project provides a local perspective. In 1951, the population of Wolverhampton was 162,000, with 2.49% of that number consisting of people born in Commonwealth and foreign countries. Over the years, Wolverhampton's profile has changed quite dramatically, with 35.5% of the population being black and minority ethnic. The arrival of Jamaicans and people from other Caribbean islands since 1948 has laid an important foundation for the rich diversity that defines the city today. Its landscape has been changed with the presence of diverse places of worship, stores selling food from around the world, takeaways and restaurants offering world cuisine, and small businesses that prevail the streets. Jamaicans played a hugely important role in supporting the town's burgeoning industries and service sectors. Many workers worked in factories such as Goodyear's, Villiers Engineering, CMB Smiths, the railway or drove buses, with some women providing manual labour in the town's hospitals. Often, these early migrants did the jobs that the indigenous chose not to do because they were considered hazardous, too demanding, or perhaps just too menial. For many, life in the motherland was not how it was imagined, perhaps due to the cold and cramped living conditions and the less than inviting reception from some of the locals. However, many were prepared to endure such conditions because they had a plan, a 5-year plan, to work and make enough money to settle back home comfortably in Jamaica. But for many, this plan changed as families were formed and children became settled. Today, it is hard to walk the streets of Wolverhampton, particularly in areas such as Whitmarines, Blakenhall, or around the city centre, without hearing people speaking a language that is unfamiliar. Churches for the African community are becoming more and more common. Supermarkets that cater for Asians, Polish people, and others are quite widespread. Hand car washes run by people from the Middle East are unmissable. There's no doubt that diversity adds vibrancy and character to a region and enables understanding of other people and their cultures. By their arrival, first-generation West Indians, including Jamaicans, have played an important role in laying the foundation for Wolverhampton being a city rich in cultural diversity. Each person coming to England has their own person to tell. The promise of work was a very strong incentive for someone to start a new life in a foreign land. But each person's reason is quite personal to them, and the stories are many and varied.
Well, I was happy to be here because my husband was here. So I always have that date in my mind.
Before coming to England, I felt quite excited about the whole idea. One of the main reasons is that my parents was already in England, and so whilst in Jamaica in those days, I felt quite lonely, isolated. So when I realized I was going to come to see them, I was awfully glad and excited.
When we in Jamaica, we hear about England, and we thought it was a land of glory and like paradise. And I think that's why many Jamaicans came to England.
So as many Jamaicans came to England and eventually settled in Wolverhampton, expectations were high. They had responded to the call to help rebuild the country to fill that work shortage gap. But what was the reality?
I came to Wolverhampton with the expectation to find things at the place much more modern. You know, when I say modern, because the houses, it was in the winter, innit? And the houses were like factories, right? And the atmosphere was so different, you know, cold and windy and, you know.
It was very nice in the summer, but then when the winter came now, you know, it was terrible. I didn't expect. Well, I heard when I was in Jamaica, I heard that if you, in the winter, if you touch your ears, it just comes off. But I knew it would be cold, you know, but I didn't expect it to be so cold, especially when the frost comes and all the trees look like they're dry, you know, but they were just the leaves off.
I was so sort of scared because when I came, there was snow on the ground. It formed peaks like icicle on the heave, the edge, you know, the guttering of the houses. And it was dull, gloomy, and all you could see was no sunshine, just birds playing in the snow. And I always says I want to go home because I'm not used to this sort of weather.
First of all, for me, it was the cold, because I wasn't expecting England would be as cold as it was. And then when it began to snow, that was a new experience as well for me.
When I came here, I saw people stepping from the door, stepping into their house, stepping into their houses from the pavement. And I thought, why are they doing that? And I couldn't understand that it wasn't as rich as they made out to be.
We all try to imagine what life will be like when we move to somewhere new. For some, they believe that England was a land flowing with milk and honey, that the streets were paved with gold, that upon arrival, the new immigrants would be welcomed with open arms. Unfortunately, the reality was something very different.
I was sharing a room, 2 beds, a chair, a table, and a wardrobe. That was all in the room. No heating system. There was no hot water running. And it was outside toilet, right? So, you know, you ever wash with cold water?
Yeah, the sharing was okay, because they had a bath, proper bath. Yes, they had a proper bathroom, so we could have a bath. We used to have to put a shilling in the meter to get a bath and to wash your clothes at the time. It was okay. We used to use paraffin heater for the bedrooms, which was, didn't like it at all. The smell from the paraffin used to be terrible.
We couldn't afford to have a room, but we could only have a bed. So most of the room, there was small beds in there, 2 or 3 beds in one room. And that's where we have to rent each bed, not the room.
I'm on my way to meet Joy McLaren, the Public Relations Officer of the local charity All Cultures, One Voice. Joy has quite an interest in Wolverhampton's history, particularly the Jamaican experience, and I'm sure she's got some interesting personal experiences as well as that of others she knows from the local community. So your dad worked at Die Casting Steels, which isn't very far from where we're sitting now. What was work like for him, and was it typical of many?
Yes, many people back then liked to live near where they worked, and obviously moving to Blake and All was an area to do that. Life was not easy for my dad. Working at Die Casting Steel, it was actually a foundry where they cast steel. It was hard work. There was the offer to put in as many hours as he wanted to. He worked both the day and the night shift, and it was difficult because living along Villiers Street, sometimes there could be traffic, but it wasn't a very noisy area, to be honest with you. He did invite us to go down to the factory as children, myself and my other siblings, and it was dark and it was dank, and there was a lot of, my recollection, a lot of little sparks of fire flying off everywhere. But the good thing was everyone got on quite well. There were there was people of different cultures that worked within there, and you know, were very friendly towards us, and the people who worked there knew us well as children.
So coming to England was an opportunity for change. One such change was a change in vocation. Back home, many were labourers. This would be an opportunity to perhaps work in industry, in the service sector. The type of jobs, however, that Jamaicans ended up doing were quite not what they expected. In fact, many felt that they were doing the work that the local people didn't want to do.
I worked at Goodyear's. Well, that wasn't too bad, really. I was doing shifts 6 till 2 and 2 till 10. I was putting valves on tubes. Yeah, very dusty. You know, you're messed up all white all over you when you're finished, because I got to put the dust on the tube that they don't stick together. So we're valving the tubes.
I went from Astlefield and go and apply for the bus, but I became on the 2nd of February 1970. On the 2nd of February 1970, I started work on the buses. And then from then, that's where I worked on the buses up until I became a driver. So I worked on the buses about roughly just under 17 years.
When I was working at Wamburn, I picked up from 4 o'clock to catch the bus, and if I don't get the bus 5 o'clock, I won't get one till 7 again. And we have to work from 7 o'clock till 7. Long hours, yeah. Oh, they can come home with 12, 13 pounds. And we have to work Sunday and Saturday as well.
Now, them days, a lot of black women was on it, working, and conducting was for women, not driving. Until late, women started to drive. But it was fun, although it was cold and the buses, them was old. There was no heat in the buses. You just have to wear a lot of clothes when you go into work.
Well, there was foundry working. That was very, very popular. CNB Simit, and Bilston Foundry, and quite a lot of foundry. Foundry work was quite privileged. because it was very hard work anyway. But a lot of people did work in furnace. Some of them work in the engineers, of course, like Ruby, Owen, and all those places there, yes. So we were more liable to be given those jobs.
The plan wasn't to stay here indefinitely, but just to stay for a short period of time to work, save enough income, and then return home to live comfortably. It was called the 5-year plan.
Yes, as I said again, the plan was not to stay. So we did not make any long-term. We didn't have that ambitious to make any long-term settlement at that time. Yes, and that could put us off, but that could put us back, and I think that's really put us back. Because you could have bought a house quite cheap them days.
Well, all Jamaicans came here to say they're working for 5 years, get some money and go back to Jamaica to make a life or something like that. But it never worked. £5 a week or $3.50 a week could never do that. But it was all right then with the £3 a week or the £5 a week. If we could go shopping, pay our rent, send money back home to Jamaica.
Oh, this 5-year plan is, most of us as West Indians, you know, because our passport only lasts for 5 years. And many of us pledged that as soon as the passport expires, we'll be going back to Jamaica. But sorry to say that circumstances change and never fulfill.
Amongst the many adjustments Jamaicans had to make was getting used to the food. As a tropical island, exotic fruit is bounteous back home. But here, well, things were very different.
Potato and potato and more potatoes. And I hated it. I didn't like potato. Still don't.
When we came first, it was potato, they called it spuds. And when I am having spuds, I have to lay the table, put the dinner, whatever we're having, on the table. You dish out your food, put it on the table, and you have your plate with your meat, and you have your knife and fork and whatever. But with me, I have to leave my spud in the pot on the fire, so it would keep warm. But if it wasn't warm, then I wasn't eating it.
During the early 60s when I came here, you could find some West Indian food, but nothing to compare with what we have now.
As more and more Jamaicans integrated with the local community, one would have thought that this would have resulted in a greater understanding between Jamaicans and the local community, which in turn would engender a mutual respect. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case. In time, tensions began to arise, and some Jamaicans began to experience hostility, even open racism. These newspaper headlines from the Express and Star from the 1960s outlined some of the incidences that took place. There were reports of men going to the local pubs and being refused service. Women would go to the laundrettes and found that some women would refuse to use the washing machines because they had used them previously. So unfortunately, the reception that some had received wasn't quite what they would have liked, resulting in integrating becoming more of a challenge that they would have hoped for. But in time, as we will see, things did begin to change.
I remember when we came, there was teddy boys and all them afraid to walk on the streets with teddy boys. But they mainly attack men. They never attack women, just men. They used to attack. But you're still frightened when you go out there and you never know what they're going to do.
I can actually say when I used to live in Welbeck Avenue, I used to live by a white neighbor. And although I would try and go around and make the fire for her and all of that, she was still a bit, not trusting me too much, but she was living on her own. And then I know that she's old and she needs help. I used to go around, make the fire for her. But if I'm going out to put my washing out and she's out there, she would run inside.
Condition was bad because they used to have people who used to demonstrate against black people coming on the buses during the 60s, early 60s. And I remember one day I was regular on a particular route, Castlecroft, the 43 route, and I went to collect a fare, and the lady wouldn't put the fare in my hand, she put it on the seat. So I had was to collect the money off the seat. So I put back the ticket onto the seat, right, because he didn't want to have anything to do with myself. Whether or not it was it applied to other drivers, I don't know.
You couldn't go in the pubs as some people used to. You had a class barrier in the pubs. There's a pub I used to go into, and the landlord would never serve us in a straight glass.
Jamaica boasts more churches per square mile than any other country. It's no surprise then that as Jamaicans came to England, finding a place to meet for worship was important. Unfortunately, as they started to go to local churches, some of the local parishioners weren't so welcoming of their coloured neighbours or brothers and sisters. This led to some forming their own church. Now, behind me is the New Testament Church of God based on Wensfield Road. Originally, a group of individuals got together and met at the YMCA Hall, St Mary's Terrace, because they just couldn't find a local church to go to that was welcoming. Over time, as more and more Caribbeans came to England, church numbers started to grow, which led to the building of a purpose-built church in Nursery Street, where over 150 people started to congregate. In time, by 1972, the congregation had grown so much, it led to them requiring a larger building, and hence we have the New Testament Church of God Church that stands behind me right now.
Yeah, the New Testament, he started in the YMCA Hall, and that was in the centre of the city, behind off Stafford Street, behind there somewhere. That's where they used to worship. Then they moved from the YMCA Hall and then go into Nursery Street into a building. That overgrown. We outgrown the building and we needed place. And not only we needed place to worship, but I think the city needed for the university campuses and all of that. So they actually wanted the place anyway for development. So we had to move. So we moved on to Wensfield Road, where the church is now, where we worship, and great big fellowship there.
When I came here, I still went to a church, but it wasn't easy finding a church that was multicolored. It was just mostly white. And a lot of churches you go in this morning, it's okay. And when you get to the door on your way out, the pastor said, "Thank you for coming, but don't come again." So that's why a lot of us couldn't find churches to worship in.
I was a Christian before I came here. I used to go to Baptist church in Jamaica. But then when we came here, we couldn't find one. And there wasn't one nearby. I used to go to St. Luke's Church because we was living over there, Vaping Hall at that time. And then we used to go to St. Luke's Church, but it wasn't very nice. The people wasn't very nice to you when you go.
The minister one day come out, I'm on about certain churches, and says to them thank him for coming, but, we would rather extend and watch,
So we've got St. Luke's Church on Lower Villiers Street, and the experience of Caribbeans going there seems to be quite different to other churches that they attended. How was that so?
Yeah, you're quite right, Ian. St. Luke's Church was one of the first Church of England churches in Wolverhampton that was accepting of the community that was living around it. And it did allow Caribbean families to attend worship. This was not always the case, from what I understand, with other Church of England churches. But St. Luke's, as children, we were allowed to attend Sunday schools, we were baptised there, we had christenings there, and it was a focal point for the community to meet upon on a Sunday. Reverend Collins and his wife, not only did they carry out weddings and funerals and christenings, they would also come and visit the local people in the community, and always came along after christenings, and I always remember them having a drink of wine with us and then going home.
As the number of Jamaicans increased within Wolverhampton, meeting their needs became important. One such need was providing the foods that the Jamaicans were used to from back home. This led to one or two individuals becoming quite innovative in addressing that need. In fact, it could be said that some Jamaicans were the first to produce and develop a home delivery service.
Late 60s, 70s, in the 70s, people used to go around and sell food then. That's where we start getting Jamaican food. People used to go around with their cars and sell food. We could buy food from them.
There was a man who had a truck like, and he used to go around and he was selling Jamaica food. He came from Wolverhampton, he used to go to Walsall, he used to travel around, and then Yam came in. So that would be in the late 60s.
My brother was one of the first men who used to make home deliveries to black people in Wolverhampton. He used to do a delivery. What he did, he used to go to Birmingham, and they used to have a wholesale market in Wolverhampton anyway. So what he would do, he used to buy get the orders. They're coming from abroad, of course, and he went to the delivery warehouse and buy it. When he gets people gave him an order with a book every week, and he would supply it to them at the weekend.
So we're now in Blakenor, just alongside Lower Villiers Street. Now, Blakenor was the location of many factories where quite a number of Jamaicans worked. Just in the distance, we have the location of the high-rise flats which were demolished to make way for houses, shops and other local amenities. Now, right beside me here is an ordinary lamppost to many, but it holds particular significance to Joy. Perhaps Joy, what does this lamppost mean to you?
Well, the lamppost means a lot to me in terms of the fact that this is the first property that my father purchased when he came to England. It's actually the site at which 88 Lower Villiers Street existed. It was part of a square of terraced houses where many African Caribbean people, Asian people and white people live quite cohesively together. It holds a lot of memories for me because in the late 70s The property got demolished when a compulsory purchase was put on all the houses, the terrace houses that were here, as we were told then, to build a ring road, but it didn't quite happen.
In Wolverhampton, you'll find the Bush Bay, yes, and all of these areas where black people would locate, because they can't find place to buy, because as soon as as a black family move in, the whole neighborhood moved out. So therefore, that's where all the black people will congregate, because there was already vacancy, because one just have to move in. So people just go. I don't think there is any boundaries now where black people can't buy a property, as long as they got the money for it.
Over time, as more and more Jamaicans came to Wolverhampton and interacted with the local community, this led to a better understanding of Jamaican people, their ways, their customs, their attitudes. This understanding even resulted in many people actually liking their new neighbours, respecting them, accepting them.
At the moment, or in the 80s, as I say, 70s and 80s, people were more accepted in places, public places like church, or even ordinary, because schools as well, even, yes, they're a lot different now. And those things probably started in the 70s, you know. People began to realize and get more acceptance as we go along, because we were doing our own church anyway. And probably that's one of the things, but definitely as it goes along, you're more acceptable.
But afterward, these people, them see how we live, and you know, they come around to us, you know, and they talk to us, you know. They say, oh, you have lovely curtains, you have, you know, and they, you know, and they come around to us. But it was all right after a few months.
They hardly wanted to touch, and they stole money and all that. They didn't want to touch. But now it's different. Everybody, the first time, met the background, but who coming in, probably treated was bad, but those coming after us, they treated better, because they get to know the colour people. Because the colour people used to keep up themselves, they dress nice and the house look nice, and everything like that.
I did have a neighbour before I moved to Bushby Lane, and if she's outside, hanging out or washing, and my wife go out there to hang out or washing, she go inside. Until my wife finished, then she come back out and, she never say how they do, or morning or evening. And if you try to say to her, she don't answer. She just walk off. So you don't find much of that now.
I would say that with the black people came into Wolverhampton, it has changed a lot of things. It has opened the eyes to a lot of people who used to think that, well, black people are sensible people. But when we started to do whatever we can do, we see the big difference with what is going on among the children, among the local authority, among a lot of things. Wolverhampton has changed a whole lot.
What contribution would you say Jamaicans, Caribbeans have made to Wolverhampton?
Well, from the time of coming over in the 60s, where they were working in the factories, in transport, in the health service, we've helped the city to grow, in all honesty. We've also made it more accessible for other communities which have come over into Wolverhampton and live, and made it more acceptable for them to be here. We've built business. We have built businesses. We've got a heritage centre, we had a cultural centre, we have got shops and we do work in the markets, we have been involved in other social enterprises, and our children have grown up within the system, gained good qualifications, in all honesty, and gone on to become lawyers, youth workers and other forms of employment have been accessed by them, which originally wouldn't have been a thought for them.
We decided to run a community center so that we'd never call it the Black Community Center. We just call it a community center for the people. And they came, we had more white people was coming into the center nowadays. We used to have it, call it the day center, the Adventist Community Day Center, Community Day Center, what it's called. And if you come to think of it, it's one of the longest community center that is going on in Wolverhampton. It's a long, long time. It's going, you see, 1983 until now. It's still going on, and you had a lot that started, and you know it closed down because we start finance it ourselves. Our people finance it, and then people like what they see when they come. We're very friendly. We give them things to do, teach them to do different things, and we find it has been a very happy occasion.
It is definitely more diverse and more friendly. I can't leave that out. Wolverhampton is diverse. It is friendly. I don't think we can say, I personally can say that I don't feel any of the oppression that we used to experience in the early years. Is nothing like that.
As the populace of Caribbean people within Wolverhampton have grown, needs have had to be met. So organisations such as the African Caribbean Community Initiative, which helps people with mental health problems from all communities, has been established. We have got councillors within the city, and we've got an MP of more recent time within the city. Voluntary organisations have grown. Churches have established themselves around the city, which have embraced people from all communities to come along and worship with them in.
And what about ACOV, your own organisation? Tell us about that.
To mention ACOV. All Cultures One Voice is an organisation which was set up back in 2004, spearheaded by Edward Drizzle and Frank Lewis, Reverend Frank Lewis. An organisation set up because as the community has grown, there has been a need for the voice of people from a diverse community to be heard. And this organisation was established for that reason. And we're there really to challenge the services that we have access to ensure that the services that we are getting is suitable for the needs of the people that it serves.
Speaking to first generation migrants has been fascinating. Authentic accounts of early experiences should inspire later generations to make the most of life's opportunities, knowing what their parents or grandparents went through. Often the black community is compared to others and criticised for their lack of innovation or business development. Given their histories and the prejudices they faced, such criticisms are unfair. Often it's simply a fact that their contribution has not been recognised. Starting a new life in another country is a big step. The resilience of many most definitely paved the way for others from many lands. England certainly has a reputation for being one of the most open and welcoming of all countries. Practically all of its major cities can take pride in the diversity of its residents and how they have contributed to its development and character. Today, this is so important as our lives overlapped and become more intertwined. Learning of the past is an education and an inspiration. Their new beginning is a continuation of a journey that people of colour will be travelling for some time to come.